Hello and welcome back to the Pulse Social Sports Podcast, where this week we are being able to talk to Martin McElhatton as he speaks about his experiences competing in the Paralympics and also his sporting projects on the side of it. So I thought I'd just open out and just say thanks for taking the time and speaking to us. Really
delighted to, and yeah.
So we'll open out a little bit with just who are you, where are you from, and just a little bit about yourself, if that's okay.
Yeah, hi, I'm Martin McElhatton. I'm Chief Executive for Willpower, the national charity for wheelchair sport, and I've been working at the charity for over 30 years. I had an accident when I was 18 years old, and that ended up with me being paralysed from the waist down. So after my rehabilitation in Stoke Mandeville Hospital at the National Spinal Injury Centre, I wanted to get into sport, and I'd seen sport there and tried him, and one thing led to another, and I played wheelchair basketball for many years. And then towards the end of I started volunteering at the charity, and then got a paid job, and now I'm the chief executive.
Nice. So how obviously you had this accident. How did you come to find, and how did you really get yourself involved with wheelchair basketball?
Well, I tried it when I was in the spinal unit, but to be honest, that was back in the 1970s, early 80s. And you know, I was so focused on trying to get home and get on with my life and go back to work and studying, that I didn't really give sport much of a thought. But then I met someone who had joined a team and said it was a lot of fun, and it was good for the fitness and well-being. So I went along and had a go. I was in my sort of hospital style chair in those days, and a few of the guys had sports chairs, but so it wasn't the necessarily the best experience, but I got enough of a taste to know that it was good fun. They're a great group of guys, and yeah, it was going to be good to join. So I went along and then eventually got a wheelchair, one of the early sort of versions of a sports wheelchair compared to today's models, but that really transformed the experience for me, and then I could start training a bit more seriously, and we played in competitions, and eventually I got picked to go on a sort of under 23s Great Britain trip to the Netherlands, and on the back of that and playing fairly well, a few of us got selected for the 1984 Paralympic team for wheelchair basketball.
No, that's amazing. So obviously you mentioned that you were competing in the Paralympics for Great Britain, I assume. What was that like? What was it like being with the GB team?
Was, you know, less high profile than it is today, and the games in 1984 were meant to be in USA, in a university complex in a place called Champaign, Illinois, but something went wrong, and at the last minute, sort of a few months out from the games, they got moved to Stoke Mandeville, which was where we were doing quite a bit of our training as the GB team. So in front of family and friends, and it was an incredible experience. There was, you know, great crowds and you know, real you know, positive vibe. Unfortunately, we didn't do that well as a team. I think we finished 7th out of 12 teams in the competition, but you know, it was a great experience. You know, but if I compare it to the athletes of today, you know, they sleep in a, you know, purpose-built Olympic village, you know, with all the mod cons and food and everything. We slept in the local primary school, near Stoke Mandeville. So a very different experience to today. But in some ways, it was just magical that you get to represent your country, and that you can do something so positive as represent GB in a Paralympic game.
No, absolutely. I completely agree with that. So from what I've got here, you played against France, Australia, Japan, Egypt, and the USA. Did you find any of those matches particularly tough? Were any of those teams as you expected, or how did you find the experience of playing against them?
As you can imagine, basketball's a team game, so the best players or the top players play most of the time, and I got to play in a couple of matches. Did a lot of warming up, but you're really part of a team. I think the USA was the toughest, but in the end, the Dutch and the French were in the final, and I think, as I recall, the French won it. But you're not too worried about who wins the gold medals when you're not in the match.
So obviously, stepping away from the Paralympics, you now work with Willpower. What has it been like sharing your knowledge and working with other disability sports such as wheelchair basketball?
Well, it's been great. I mean, I've had an amazing career. When I was at the games in 1984, I saw wheelchair tennis for the first time. With that, nationally and internationally, in terms of my job, I started doing public relations, so I got to know all the different sports, and that was really great because you could see, how the different sports were played, the athletes involved, the commitment that they gave to their training and competitions. It was really an eye-opener to see, what makes a Paralympic athlete, and fantastic to be part of that with the charity at Willpower. And over the years, our role has changed, because in the early days we were very much involved in helping to send the Great Britain team to, when the British Paralympic Association came along, our role shifted, and we were much more of a grassroots organisation, getting young and newly disabled people into sport. So, really going back to my roots of helping people like I was with a spinal injury to find a sport they can love, enjoy, play for fitness, for health, to keep active, and then a few people, and some will go on to compete at a high level. So, really great to be able to help anyone with a disability achieve their sporting dreams, really.
No, definitely. That sounds like really, really interesting and just really good opportunities and experiences. Would you say that whilst working with Willpower, you've had any particular high moments or subsequently any particular challenges at all?
Well, there's been lots of both, really. Lots of highlights in terms of, the events that we put on for newly paralysed people, our interspinal unit games, and seeing people try sport for the first time, and that light bulb moment, go on when they realise that, not everything's not going to be so challenging, and it will be possible to enjoy life after a spinal injury. Through to seeing youngsters, develop and compete for their country. I think one of the highlights was seeing some of the wheelchair tennis players, lead the GB team in London 2012. And people that I'd known and helped, with their development. So that was really special. And I guess probably the biggest challenge, but also the most rewarding achievement, was when we reopened our sports centre in 2003 after a £10.2 million redevelopment. A lot of people involved, and huge amount of fundraising and support from organisations like Sport England. to make it happen. But yeah, that seeing the facilities reopened and the knowing how many lives that they would change through providing great facilities to enable disabled people to play sport and be active, was a real highlight for me.
No, definitely. That sounds absolutely amazing. And Willpower sound like such a good group.
Yeah, well, we try and do what we can to support people, and obviously that's been very challenging in the last year or so, and certainly during the pandemic. And so, our normal events that we do face to face with people have had to be cancelled or postponed. And so we've moved a lot of our delivery online and produced a whole range of exercise and yoga videos, and supported people with equipment, resistance bands and all sorts of different things to help them stay active at home, because we know that their physical and mental health is really under pressure at this time. And for disabled people who've either been shielding or isolating or just trying to stay healthy, it's so important to be doing some exercise, and it's been difficult to get out and do that. So it's great that we can support them at home through the resources that we've produced.
No, definitely. That sounds like a really good initiative to take, especially during the pandemic when no one can see each other and no one can interact at all. If you don't mind me asking one final question, do you think that overall disability sports, from the grassroots, from kind of the small clubs right up to Team GB and the professional element, do you think that that's been on the rise in terms of popularity, public awareness, and interactions as well?
Well, certainly London 2012 did a huge amount to raise the profile of Paralympic sport and what disabled people can do in terms of sporting achievements. And I think the public are much more aware of what's available for disabled people. I think there's also been more TV coverage, more awareness of different athletes across a range of sports. So, you've seen, disabled people on Strictly, Paralympians on cooking shows. You've seen all sorts of people get involved in the media, and that can only be great to inspire others. And certainly the work that we do, part of it is to use the power of the Paralympics and the heritage and story of the history of Paralympic sport at Stoke Mandeville to inspire young and newly disabled people to play sport and be active, and that transforms their lives through sport.
No, definitely, absolutely. I just wanted to say a massive thanks for taking the time and talk to us.
Well, thank you, and it's been a great pleasure, and delighted to be part of your website.
Thank you, Martin, for coming on the call, and a massive thanks to our audience at home for listening. If you would like to like or subscribe to our page, we can be found at Pulse Social CIC on our YouTube, our Facebook, our Twitter, or our LinkedIn at Pulse Social CIC. That's all we've got for this week. See you next time.